In 2025, venture capital injected $211 billion into artificial intelligence. That single sector captured exactly half of all global venture funding for the entire year. But at the enterprise level, that capital is hitting a wall. An MIT project analyzed over 300 deployments and found that 95% of them generated zero measurable impact on profit and loss. This friction is so pervasive that 30% of generative AI projects are now abandoned immediately following the proof of concept phase. This creates a contradiction. Is the $211 billion a speculative financial bubble or the beginning of a massive technological deployment? History suggests that during a technological frenzy, financial capital always decouples from reality, over-investing in the base layer before productive capital can use it. When the dot-com crash erased trillions, foundational infrastructure remained. The over-invested cables and server racks became the physical basis for the modern internet. As the marginal cost of software production drops toward zero, economic models can predict exactly where the resulting value will accumulate. The AI boom is a macroeconomic certainty and a microeconomic bloodbath. Survival requires understanding the mechanics of both. The fundamental cost of raw artificial intelligence computation, the lifeblood of these massive language models, is currently in an absolute freefall. Between March 2023 and December 2024, the inference cost per token for GPT-4 dropped by over 90%. Many builders assume that a near-infinite supply of cheap compute will automatically create its own demand. A 2026 paper formalizes this as a structural Jevons paradox. Falling inference prices render aggregate demand for compute super-elastic. As compute gets cheaper, developers adopt agentic architectures that consume far more total resources to perform the exact same tasks. We saw this same pattern during the birth of cloud computing. When AWS S3 storage costs dropped by 85%, it didn't shrink IT budgets. It enabled business models like global video streaming and massive fintech platforms that were previously impossible. The App Store followed the exact same logic. By lowering development and distribution costs, it expanded the mobile demand curve enough to support the entire gig economy, despite a 99% failure rate for individual apps. According to Wright's law, as production costs plummet, the total economic footprint of the software industry will rapidly grow. While the structural Jevons paradox guarantees the overall market will expand, it provides no protection for the individual software suppliers competing within it. If the macroeconomic pie is rapidly growing, why are 95% of individual enterprise pilots failing to generate a measurable return? Information economies operate under the rule of increasing returns. The player who starts ahead tends to pull further ahead through massive positive feedback loops. When software production is no longer the bottleneck, the ultimate constraints become user attention and institutional trust. Aggregation theory explains where that new demand goes. It doesn't distribute across thousands of startups. It flows toward distributors owning the user relationship. Microsoft and Google intercept this AI demand. With over 1 billion combined users, they are the default interface. The startup swarm dissolves. Building a generic wrapper without a unique distribution channel is a mathematical dead end. The 2025 funding data confirms this consolidation. Out of all global venture capital, 14% went to just 2 companies, OpenAI and Anthropic. The market is splitting. Infrastructure providers are capturing the compute spend, while application builders are starving for distribution. In a world where software is no longer scarce, new demand is intercepted by existing channels. This centralizes wealth and crushes the horizontal startup. There is a third threat: the toxic oversupply of zero-cost content. This reflects George Akerlof's market of lemons. When a buyer cannot distinguish between high-quality and low-quality goods, the bad products drive out the good. This equation defines the breaking point for AI, when the time required to verify an output exceeds the value of the information itself. This triggers a market death spiral. Users reject all outputs, assuming everything is a lemon, regardless of quality. Mention of AI slop spiked 200% in 2025. Over 80% of those mentions are strictly negative. As a result, consumer enthusiasm for AI content plummeted from 60% in 2023 to just 26% in 2025. Without reputation mechanisms, the near-zero cost of generation doesn't generate new demand. It creates a field of noise that suffocates it. The question for builders is how to survive the microeconomic collapse while the macroeconomic market continues to expand. The data reveals a single successful counter-strategy: deep vertical integration with structural switching costs. In software development, Cursor reached $2 billion in annual recurring revenue by counterpositioning against traditional IDEs. In corporate law, Harvey hit $200 million in recurring revenue in 3 years by embedding into high-friction proprietary data environments. Ambience Healthcare used regulated, localized data moats to block global aggregators from entering their specific sector. Builders must exercise Kersnerian alertness, finding highly specific, localized pain points rather than broad software deficiencies. Building a generic horizontal AI tool and hoping for a rising tide to lift your boat is a mathematical failure. Value will be captured by the hyperscalers at the base and the deep vertical dominators at the top. Everything in the middle